Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate. We're talking about the relegation dogfight in League One. Delighted to be joined to start with by Charles Commins of Cobblers to Me. Charles, just wondered how you're feeling about Kevin Nolan's start at Sixfields. You've certainly been able to rack up a few clean sheets so far.
Yeah, I think the defence has improved a substantial amount. We're not losing by 4 or 5 anymore, which is good, like we were before Christmas. I think overall it's been a steady but not fantastic start for Nolan. It was hard coming in. Obviously we weren't in the best of form. It was always going to be a bit of a struggle, and he basically went back to basics right at the start. If we ignore the Reading game on Boxing Day, which was his first game in charge, he'd only had a couple of days inside the club before that game, so I think we can kind of write that off and look past that one to the next ones. From that moment on, we stopped, conceding the silly goals, and we just were very, very basic in our play. It was a simple case of, right, first and foremost, let's try and keep a clean sheet. We'll get that into our system. And then, now we're starting to see that there's a little bit more going on in terms of, play on the ball. It's not just lump it forward and play for free kicks at the moment now, like it was, for instance, against Shrewsbury on the 29th, I think it was, of December. You can see that it's slowly evolving and getting there, but we're still obviously not doing good enough, let's say, at the top end of the pitch in attack. It's just not quite coming off. And I think that's been a big problem for us for quite a little while, to be honest. It hasn't been a case of it just being while Kevin Nolan's been in charge. It's been more or less all season. We might have a good game here or there where we manage to score, but it's always felt like in attack we maybe don't quite have the know-how or the pace, most importantly, to make anything happen that will actually, scare defenses. So we're relying an awful lot on build-up play and then getting a cross in, for example, for someone like Tom Eaves or one of the centre-backs who are up for a set piece or something. But there's definitely reasons to be positive, I think, Gab. It's just that from my perspective and the way I feel at the moment is I'm just a bit worried. I know that there's lots of games left to play, but for some reason I feel like there's only maybe 3 games left to play. I'm probably more nervous than I should be at this stage, but it's hard when we had a fantastic result away at Wycombe on Saturday, but then we followed that up with a 3-1 defeat against Bolton, which, in fairness, at the very beginning of the season, had you said, do you expect to get much from that fixture away at Bolton? I'd say no.
Maybe if they still had Ian Everton, it was the back end of their reign, his reign, yes. And maybe, but they seem to have turned a bit of a corner, don't they, Bolton? But hopefully Northampton can continue to turn the corner and Kevin Nolan get the points they need to stay up. Delighted to bring in our co-host for the evening, Jake Tong of the Here for the Lincoln podcast. You two look pleased to see one another.
We saw each other like 2 weeks ago. It's all coming full circle.
Can't get away from him.
I know there's
a problem.
Absolutely, Jake. Lincoln won 1-0 at Sixfields. Sorry to mention it, Charles. A couple of weeks ago. What have you made of the Cobblers? I don't know if you're able to catch that game in full, but what have you made of Northampton?
I was stood behind the goal, Gab, so I was able to catch that game in full, thankfully. Although I wish I hadn't, because it was actually quite boring. What I thought about Northampton that day was, and definitely I remember the game in October when they came to Central Bank. When they had Tom Eaves up front, certainly in that game back in October, they looked more of a threat. I seem to remember they brought him on at half time. I think we'd made it level, and they brought him on, and he completely changed the momentum in their favour. And then when he went off, and Tyler Roberts further got sent off for doing something stupid, that's when the momentum switched again, and we were able to beat them. The other week, I thought that all they had, particularly going forward, was that ball into Tom Eaves, and it was effective at times. Paulie O'Connor was winning a lot of headers, but Tom Eaves had a lot of joy. There was a shot that he had from outside the box that was looping in that G-Cox saved particularly well. I think he had a header that went straight at the goalkeeper as well. So what Northampton need, I think, and I've listened to Charles on his podcast earlier on today and saying that they just need to get bodies around him more often. And Terry Taylor seems to be someone that can do that. But for me, they probably need someone maybe even another striker that's short and quick, someone like Kieran Bowie that they had last year, or maybe another creative player that can play in midfield that just sticks to Tom Eaves and can pick the second balls up. Also, I mean, Charles also mentioned it earlier on today with Danny about pace in this team. They don't particularly have a lot of pace. I thought Tariq Fossil was fairly quick. He seemed to be quick when he scored a hat-trick at the Bank for Oxford a couple of years ago, but seems to have lost that edge of pace. They don't have anyone terrifyingly quick. Mitch Pinnock isn't, I would say, is probably known more for his delivery than his pace. TJ Ayoma, not a quick player himself if he plays wing back. I think they just need a bit of pace. But I think Kevin Nolan is slowly but surely getting it right. The draw at Wickham suggests that, as Charles has just said. So, yeah, I think with the right additions, if they can get them in, because that's the difficulty when you're Northampton Town in League One, is getting that quality, because it is so tough because of the levels of budget. Northampton are in a relegation scrap with Bristol Rovers. Bristol Rovers will have like maybe 2-3 times the budget of Northampton, which makes it incredibly more difficult, because even though you're going for the same sort of player, Bristol Rovers can just financially take Northampton out of the water. So I think they've got a tough ask on their hands, but I think Kevin Nolan is proving himself to be the right person to try and do that. And I think you have to give him time to implement the style a little bit more. And I mean, if you ask me now, I think Northampton, I'm really torn whether they finish in 21st or 20th. It's that close, I think. Really, it relies on what they do in the next couple of days and to swing me one way or the other. But definitely there are signs there for me that this Cobblers team can certainly stay in the league.
Yeah, I'm a little bit apprehensive about Northampton. Not that I haven't underestimated the Cobblers in the past. So, but I am a little bit apprehensive, and I don't know how the feeling is in the fan base, Charles, that as much as you've been competitive under Kevin Nolan, there are signs that Burton have won 3 on the spin. Shrewsbury have pulled off some shock results recently. Even Crawley got a win last time out. Cambridge got a point at Bolton and beat someone else at home recently and made a lot of signings. So you would say each of the 4 teams in the current bottom 4 are all showing some sort of signs of life, which suggests that 1 or 2 of them are probably going to look at a good last 3 months of the season and probably find some form, which means that really does put the heat on Northampton. So is there a bit of an apprehension in the fan base around that?
There is from me. I'll be honest. I saw Burton's 3rd win in a row on blinking Tuesday night and thought, oh no. I mean, it's one of those, because I didn't think when they took Gary Bowyer in as their manager, personally, I sort of went, okay. And yet he's, defying my expectation with these 3 results. They've obviously gone and bought in at least 1 striker, if not 2. And that is it. Daddy Bodvarsson, is that?
That's the one. Yeah, he's won the goals for them.
He scored 4 goals, or 3 in 4, or 4 in 3, whichever way around it is. That's what's panicking me. That's what is actually worrying me. I don't like being chased, Gab, and I mean that in terms of football and at night. I am just it's one of those where I am looking over my shoulder, and you're right that those teams are showing a sign of life. I mean, all we've got to do is go back to Saturday, and you would say that we were showing signs of life on the basis of getting a point away at Wickham. It's not like we are losing games now every week by 4 or 5 goals or anything like we were before Christmas. We're just missing that final thing in the final third. And if we can do that, then I've got enough hope and positivity about it that we will actually, keep keep our League One status alive. I just think that Kevin Nolan has sorted out the defence already, got us sorting out that. Then he's brought in Liam Shaw and Terry Taylor, who have shored up the midfield, made us look a little bit more creative. And I mean, Terry Taylor has made such a difference in just 2 games. Our midfielders, all the way through the season, it didn't matter who it was, always looked like whenever they got on the ball that they were almost panicking every single time. They wanted to get rid of the ball as quickly as they could. I was, you know, on our podcast that came out last night that Jake's listened to already, I said, it's like me playing football. I get the ball and I do the most obvious thing with it because I can't play football, basically. I am not very good. I've never been very good. And so I would do the most obvious thing in the world every time I received the ball. And it would just be easily read by a defender or whoever was up against me. So they'd intercept it or they'd tackle and take the ball off me like I wasn't actually on the pitch. And that's what it felt like was happening a lot of the times, not every time, before Taylor's come in. Taylor now creates his own space and time when he's got the ball so that he can then make a pass. And that won't always necessarily be going forward. It won't be a defense splitter or anything like that necessarily, but it gets the momentum back to us and calms everything down. And we've been missing that so much. So for me, seeing the signs that the defense and then the midfield looks to have been solved, I'm hopeful that he can now do the same. It's almost like he's gone from back to front. You know, even Nick Zanev is looking a million times better than what he was before. And I don't think he was terrible or anything beforehand, but he looked like he was a number 2 goalkeeper. Whereas now he looks like a number 1. He's making some terrific saves and he's commanding his area really well. He's not kicking the ball out of play from goal kicks as regularly as he was beforehand. Everything seems to be going in the right direction. We now just need to start getting the best out of Tom Eaves up front. Whether or not Tyler Roberts, I know he's on his way back from injury now, whether or not he can be that little bit extra to come back into the side, give us that little bit of creativity. I'm not sure. Pace is our biggest issue. Hands down, we just don't simply have it. Jake said before, Mitch Pinnock, known for his delivery, not his running. That's where we're lacking most.
And Tom Eaves is known for his target man play, not his running. So it's like, you know,
and yet he keeps going down the channel for some reason, Gab. I don't know why he can't just operate within the confines of like the 6-yard box. He should be there.
If you play, I think if you play Tom Eaves, I feel like you need another striker a lot. His best form, I'm pretty sure off the top of my head, because this is going back a few years, but I'm pretty sure at Gillingham his best season was alongside Brandon Hanlon, who's another striker who did a lot of his running. So I'm not sure how good he's going to be as a lone striker without someone who's quick alongside of him and runs the channels and does all that. So hopefully that's something that Northampton can look at. Charles, just before I bring in Jack Groom of the Shrews Analysis, do you think Northampton are going to stay up?
Yes, I do. It will be by the skin of our teeth. I would be as down in the dumps as I can be. I was very deflated after Tuesday night, and not because it was a terrible game. Like Lewis in the chat has basically said that it wasn't a 3-1 game, and that's right, it wasn't. If we'd have come away with a point there, I think it would have been good. I think it would have been justified for us to get a point. Bolton just sat back after they went 2-1 up. You could feel the nervousness around the stadium. We just couldn't break their defences down. And I think if Liam Shaw hasn't scored the goal of a century in the back of his own net, then we might have got a point out of that. So I'm not massively worried. I was very deflated after the game because of the score. But I do think a lot of the games that we've got left are now playing the teams that are closer to us, which will make that, I think they're going to be the big important games. I don't think the season lives and dies by a game away at Bolton Wanderers for us. It's the games against, I mean, we've played Burton, already, but it's the games against the likes of them and Bristol Rovers that we've got coming up. Even Peterborough later on. It'll be those games against those teams that are around us, which will be 6 pointers, they'll be the determining factor as to whether or not we're still in League One next season. But I do believe that we can do it. If I didn't, what would be the point in me going?
Brilliant stuff, Charles. Well, some big games coming up for the Tyne, or for the Tan, I think is the pronunciation. I always get that wrong.
It doesn't sound right unless you've got a Northampton accent.
Okay, all right.
Just call us cobblers.
All right, for the cobblers. Okay, we'll go with that for now. Better on the safe side. Charles, thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening, mate.
Thanks very much, guys. Take care.
Cheers, Charles.
Come on. We will be joined by Freddie Owers in a few minutes, of Cambridge United, of the Yellow and Black Army, as it's called. But for now, we're joined by Colours Blue and Amber, Jack from Shrews Analysis. Ben Darrell said Northampton based in Sunderland now. I know, yeah, I've absolutely made a bug of that one up, haven't I? So, Jack, Shrewsbury Town, there's been some competitive performances recently. Obviously, that derby victory over Wrexham could have been a real springboard. Unfortunately, you haven't quite been able to follow it up with some tough away games since then. But is there a little bit more optimism under Gareth Ainsworth that you're in there fighting with a chance?
Hello, boys. Yeah, thank you for having me as always. Yes, there is, when compared to earlier in the season under Paul Hurst. I think everyone is more positive with Ainsworth at the helm. It's more the circumstances that Ainsworth finds himself in, which is maybe detracting away from that. You know, the lack of ability to attract anybody in January, really. I know we've still got a few days left, but we need a couple more players at least. And at the minute, it's looking like, or this doesn't seem anything imminent is gonna be happening with that. I think performances on the whole have been okay since probably the Wigan game, which was the last game before Christmas. Since then, we've been in every game. We've been competitive in every game. Got over the line in some and not quite done so in others. So we're certainly there or thereabouts. But yeah, I think things could be better, to put it like that, really. And the optimism that maybe once was there or has been there a couple of times isn't quite there at the minute.
Jake, what do you think about Shrewsbury under Gareth Ainsworth?
Well, I mean, we were on the wrong end of a classic Gareth Ainsworth performance on Boxing Day, and it riled me up, to be fair, Gab, and I said that to Jack on Twitter afterwards. But yeah, no, I like Gareth Ainsworth. Obviously, he has a connection with Lincoln anyway as a player, and that will always sort of give me a more favour towards the teams he manages. And at the moment, he's at Shrewsbury. And to be fair, I think what he's done is he's tried to strip them back to basics. I think he's tried to make them hard to beat, and when they get in front, they're difficult to peg back. I remember watching a game against Wrexham when they went 2-1 up. I didn't ever feel that Wrexham didn't have a gilt-edged chance to get back into the game. They managed it expertly. They took the ball into the corner. John Marquis held the ball up. George Lloyd that night was outstanding in the work that he did up front. And then I think back to the game in which they beat us. They scored early through a set piece, which Gareth Ainsworth teams are traditionally known for. So I'd like to ask Jack how that sort of aspect of the game's going for Shrewsbury. But after that, game management perfectly. I've always said Gareth Ainsworth teams are famously the worst team to go 1-0 down to, because you just will not get back into the game, because they are so good at doing everything, at just getting over the line. And they've been so close in a couple of occasions as well. I think back to Charlton on the weekend where they were so close to getting a really big point. But yeah, I think they've got the basis of some good players. Where I do worry, and what you just said about the other teams, Gab, when we were talking to Charles about Burton picking up, Cambridge seemed to have managed to get a little bit of momentum with the signings that they're bringing in and reportedly bringing in over the next couple of days. I am worried that if this group of Shrewsbury players isn't added too significantly, then we might. I don't want to say they get cut adrift, but I think they might find it more difficult to get themselves out of the peril that they're in. I like the lad Stewart that's coming from Leamington. I think he knows where the net is, but apart from that, I've not seen anything like Burton, for example, son and John Daddy Budvarson, JJ McKiernan has been a revelation that's going in, Owen Dodgson as well. I've not seen that sort of impact from anybody in the Shrewsbury team. So I'd like to see maybe then do a little bit more between now and the window. But
maybe if they'd sold to Nordic Football Group,
maybe they'd have JJ McKiernan. Yeah, absolutely correct. You'd be enjoying JJ McKiernan. But I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think Shrewsbury have got to be more on the. They've got to keep doing that. They've got to keep being hard to beat. They've got the forward quality, I think, to win a couple of games. George Lloyd can score goals. John Marquis has scored goals at this level.
I like George Lloyd as well. I love his work ethic, and he's got a brilliant spring. I mean, he played at Cheltenham at the same time as Dan and Lunderloo, who was a lot taller than George Lloyd. And yet George Lloyd was much better in the air than Lunderloo in that time. So it just shows what a great attitude he's got. So I reckon Gareth Ainsworth is absolutely going to love working with him.
Yeah, and I've said it to Jack previously before. I said every time I've watched Shrewsbury, I've been impressed because I've watched you against Exeter when you were quite unfortunate, I thought, to lose that night. Wrexham where you beat them, and then obviously against us in December as well. So that's what I did want to ask you, Jack, actually, about the set pieces, because we've seen Gareth Ainsworth Wycombe just become like phenomenal at the set pieces, scoring them all the time. Has he been able to implement anything apart from the one that obviously beat us on Boxing Day?
There's been a couple of attempted ones. I don't think off the top of my head we've scored from any since that game, but we've attempted a couple, so they're still clearly there or thereabouts. But I think to say that we've got them refined would probably be a bit of an overstretch. But yeah, they're clearly still in the armoury and still thought of at times, but probably not used or not been completed at least as much as we would like to have seen since the game against yourselves, mate, on Boxing Day.
Can I just ask what you think you need going into the final 3 days of the window, Jack? Because you spoke about needing a few players. What areas and what key attributes do you think those players have got to bring to this Shrewsbury team to make sure that you stay up?
I think thinking realistically, given the constraints we're under both financially and geographically, as Gareth Ainsworth alluded to a few times, given the type of player maybe I expect us to sign, which is maybe not quite the question you're asking there, mate, but I think somebody with a bit of know-how and experience is what I would probably be expecting the most. Someone who, we were linked is a bit strong, but people were suggesting the name Sam Vokes earlier in the window of someone who Ainsworth knows, has worked with before, isn't getting the look in at Wycombe, but it seems that that's cooled a little bit now. To try and answer your question as best as possible, I think we need a striker. We've only got 2 recognised strikers really with Marquis and Lloyd, so we need somebody to compete with them and add a bit of competition up there because they're not going to be able to play every single game. We need to strengthen all over the pitch, but I think we're looking at probably bringing in 2 as a maximum. So given the areas we've got and the areas we've struggled in, I think it might sound a bit strange considering we've got 2 but a left wing back. Mal Benning struggled this season. George Nurse hasn't played that often. There's clearly something not quite right off the back of his 2 injuries. And so
it's a shame because George Nurse looked like Jack, didn't he? Like somebody who could have maybe had quite an upwardly mobile career, but it's those 2 long-term layoffs that seem to have stalled him a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. He was one of the shining lights, is maybe a bit strong, but in the season he had under Steve Cottrell in 21-22, he was one of the most consistent players. And then, to have 2 back-to-back ACLs has just killed him, really. And when I've seen him play, he's not done too badly, really, in the glimpses I've seen this season. But there's clearly something that's gone amiss, given that both Hurst and now Ainsworth are seemingly reluctant to put him in and to throw him in. I think so. Yeah, someone to plug that gap would be ideal, but I would maybe be doubtful that we'll see it, given that we've got 2 players there already. I think on the other side, Luca Hall, the right wing back, Alex Gilead can fill in there. I think from little bits and pieces I've heard, we've been looking at a couple of centre midfielders, which we've missed out on this week. So
I was wondering, actually, Jack, sorry to interrupt there. I was wondering if Gareth Ainsworth was going to go for Curtis Thompson at Grimsby, because I think he'd be a good fit for what Ainsworth wants to try and do, because he's worked with him for a number of years at Wycombe Wanderers. And I'm not sure at Grimsby's really a fit for what David Artell wants, because it's more of a footballing style. So that wouldn't shock me, that kind of move. He's already gone for Dom Gape, hasn't he? Whether he wants another ex-Wycombe midfield general, get the band back together kind of thing.
Yeah, it's one of them. I've not heard the name mentioned, but that kind of signing wouldn't surprise me, to be honest.
So, Jack, what are you feeling in the waters? Because on the one hand, we're talking about Shrewsbury Town as a club that needs fundamental change to really sustain itself in League One, I think it's fair to say. On the other hand, you're talking about Shrewsbury Town with Gareth Ainsworth being this kind of infectious ball of positivity that's kind of sort of lit a fire within the club and given fan base a little bit of belief and something to kind of grab onto in terms of this season. So with those two sort of things in mind, do you feel like you've got a chance of staying up?
We've got a better chance than when or before Ainsworth was appointed. Definitely, he's improved us as a team. But you look at, I know you discussed it already tonight, we've improved, but so have other teams as well.
Sure.
And so given the gulf that was there in the first place, we need to, improve double again to even make up the gap that you walked in on. I think if we'd have had Ainsworth all season, we wouldn't be in the position that we're in now, but we didn't, so we are. And it's one of them that I think most fans are just, it might sound a bit defeatist, almost accepting of this season. Ainsworth has been quite vocal in the fact of he doesn't, saying we're not going to go down and we're going to get above that line.
Yeah, he won't go back until it's mathematical.
Great, and that positivity is to be admired, but he's not a miracle worker. And to achieve safety from where we are will be a hell of an achievement. So I think most fans are just hoping this takeover gets done and kind of look on from the summer, maybe have to grin and bear these next 3-4 months or whatever it is. And then even if it is in League Two next season, we'll hopefully have something to look forward to in the summer and put these last few years behind us that have been a real struggle.
Yeah, hopefully. Step 1 is trying to make that great escape, and then step 2 is hopefully a bit of change off the field. So hopefully you're successful on both counts, Jack. We wish you the best and look forward to catching up later in the season, mate.
Cool. Cheers, boys. Thank you very much. See you later.
Cheers, Jack. And get following Shrews Analysis, of course, on Twitter, or Analysis Shrews as the at is. Delighted to be joined now by Freddie Owers of the Yellow and Black Army, Cambridge United fan. Good evening, Freddie. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, guys.
You seem to have been very active in the January transfer window. I suppose you needed to be to give yourselves an outside chance of staying up even. But is there a bit more encouragement to come from, I don't know, results like that 2-2 draw at Bolton where you came very close to winning along with the incomings that the club has brought?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all necessary. It sort of had to happen this month. There had to be movement. There had to be a few results. Or else if we came to the end of January, none of that had happened. It really would have been down and out. But I think if you'd offered us 4 points from the games against Bolton, Mansfield and Rotherham, we'd have probably taken it. Obviously, I think fans were a little bit disappointed not to come away with the result at Rotherham, seeing as we went 1-0 up. Yeah, the calibre of players that we're bringing in, I think, is just what we need. The players that people know less so much about, including myself, like Osong, obviously have stuff to prove. I say that to you every single time, is that we thrive when we have players that have something to show and want to make a point. So there's no metric or any reason why that can't work in our favour. And I'm very happy with the signing of Ballard and today Stevenson. I think they're the sort of profiles of players that we definitely needed, and hopefully a little bit more movement in terms of incomings before the deadline.
Do you think, Freddie, that you need to add a goalkeeper? Obviously, given that Morosi's obviously did his hamstring, didn't he, in the win over Mansfield. Jack Stevens, I feel, has maybe looked a little bit shaky at times. Obviously, Reyes has gone back. Do you think that we might see Gary Monk at a goalkeeper between now and Monday?
I think every single fan really hopes so. It's the sort of thing. I'm sure I think he said in the press conference today or yesterday that they obviously didn't plan to have another goalkeeper come in during January, but it's something that once they have the other players over the line, which I think Stevenson was the last one today, something that they're going to hopefully look at. I mean, it's definitely required because we only have one starting goalkeeper without dipping into our reserves or academy, which I don't think anyone wants to have to do if they're in a relegation fight. So yeah, hopefully anyone. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, saying anyone sounds a bit flippant, but I think we might have to settle for Stevens being our starting keeper for the rest of the season, or at least until Morosi's back, unless they can pull out something big in the last few days.
Freddie, Ben Strang, the sporting director, has a couple of times, I think the statements themselves were sort of on behalf of the club, but whether, I would imagine he was the one that kind of initiated a statement kind of thing. very supportive of Gary Monk, and I think there's been a couple of statements from the club sort of clarifying that position. And as much as from an outside perspective, I might have questioned that because the reviews on the performances under Monk for much of the season from Cambridge United fans hasn't been especially positive, and there could have been an argument for making a change. There's also part of me that quite likes the transparency aspect that the club have clarified their position. And I think if you're a fan base, you want to feel like you've got an open dialogue. So it's not so much about never hearing things that you don't want to hear, but at least actually feeling like the club is listening to the fans and is communicating, as opposed to having owners that are sort of absent and silent.
Yeah, I think it's reflective, obviously, when they talk to the fans about results and plan going forward. It was also very well carried out with the whole club crest vision. There was a lot of communication between the board and the fans, and it's something that no one will ever complain about their club doing. I think it's an amazing thing and something that us as fans should be very, very thankful of. And in terms of the exact decisions that are being communicated, obviously there are going to be loads of different opinions, and people will stand on each side of them. But the fact that the board are communicating that stuff is 100% a good thing. Now, Gary Monk getting the backing of the board, I think I understand the notion, because it was a situation where it would cost a lot of money to get rid of him, and there wasn't much else on the market in terms of immediate results. So sticking with him for this season and really outlining that, being really honest with the supporters why, was probably the best way for the club to go about it. And unless people think that they know more than the sporting directors, which people might be entitled to do, then they can have their say on things. But I'm definitely someone who will sort of trust the board and trust the club. And as long as they're being transparent, I see no reason to start going for anyone's head or being toxic about it. Obviously, we all want the same thing, and that's for Cambridge United to win games. So,
absolutely, yeah. Has there been a sort of an uplift in performances, and are you sort of a bit more hopeful based on the kinds of additions? Ben Stevenson, of course, the one that's been announced this afternoon, coming into midfield.
I think the last few weeks have been one of those few weeks where it's happened a couple of times this season where we have picked up some results and everyone thinks, okay, this is the start of a change in the tides maybe, and then it's dropped off again. It's sort of right now I can't say whether things have changed. It's going to have to happen over the next 2-3 weeks to see whether we can build on this 2-week period of more positivity. Hopefully the Rotherham result isn't the start of another slump. So yeah, 2-3 weeks time we'll really be able to say whether things are changing. But it's in one of those situations right now where we're all a bit hopeful that stuff's going to happen, and there's evidence on the table over the last few weeks. But yeah, we have to see how these new signings settle in and whether we can build on the points we've picked up in the last few weeks.
Freddie, I did want to ask you about Josh Stokes, because he's clearly made a big impact since coming in. I think when he got injured, you could tell that the quality of the team had gone down, not significantly, but a fair amount in terms of your creative input. How big a role does he have to play if Cambridge are going to stay in League One this year?
Yeah, massively. I think he's probably our only real asset in that role. He's a very unique player in our squad, and obviously to sit in front of players like Digby coming back, Jordan Cousins, sort of the rest of our midfield is a bit more defensive or box-to-box style, whereas Josh Stokes is sort of creative, skillful, a bit more of an eye for goal, and he has been, he's been amazing, and he's very, very valuable to the team in terms of the role that he plays. So the more minutes he can get, the better. I think there are a lot of question marks up about him being subbed off last night against Rotherham, over someone like Kachunga, who maybe hadn't done as well. A player that I also love, but Josh Stokes has definitely shown that he is someone that we need to keep in the team as much as possible. Definitely.
I have to ask about Big Dan, Gab, before we go. Big Dan and Lunderloo, how's he faring on it at Cambridge?
Yeah, again, he was one of those players that every single season since we've been in the league, we have signed a player for that season that sort of fills that big striker role, normally on loan. I know we had something different first couple of seasons, definitely the last 2 years. Last year we had Ghassan Ahadme, this year Dan Lunderloo, as sort of that hold-up, disruptive striker. And I've been happy with him. A lot of fans weren't, and then he won them back, and now he's out injured for a while. So Whether we'll get to see much more of him before the end of the season, I'm not too sure. But the sort of player that always does you favours when you're scrapping down at the bottom and making life difficult for slightly more technical teams. He can be very disruptive, in the air, hold up play, and then playing alongside players like Brophy, Stokes, Sully Kaikai as that hold up role is something that we have definitely benefited from. There's evidence for that, and whether fans want him to play more or not, that's up to them. But yeah, I think it's a sort of profile of player that we always accept and always does well at Cambridge United.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking Stevenson's certainly going to add quality to the midfield, because by the looks of things, and BBC don't always get things right in terms of the lineups, but it looks like Jordan Cousins and James Brophy started in central midfield at Rotherham. So I'm wondering actually whether James Brophy is going to go back to left wing back ahead of Danny Andrew when Stevenson comes in, because I would have thought that Brophy would be more of an attack-minded option there, whereas Andrew as a wing back is a reasonably technical player, but you wouldn't necessarily say somebody that can sort of get up and down necessarily.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that Brophy is a wide player. Whether or not, that's correctly, he was playing in central midfield. I'm not sure. Definitely would expect Stevenson to fit in right in the middle, and Brophy always to occupy those places on the left going forward. Andrew sort of more defensive minded, and hopefully Stevenson can be a really good asset in the midfield going forward and backwards. And we can start to have a bit more of an organised core of the pitch with them players like Cousins and Digby covering just in front of the defence, and Stevenson doing the rest, and then having a player like Stokes in the middle going forward. And then we have the wide options as well.
Well, hopefully it pans out that way. How's Liam Bennett's form been for you, Freddie? Because he's somebody who sort of emerged as quite a bright young talent in his loan at Walsall a couple of seasons ago, and then coming back to Cambridge. He's obviously playing as a right wing back now, which I think there seems to be a view among Hughes fans that he's definitely better as a wing back than as a right back in a four. So I'm just wondering if you think playing as a wing back is helping him sort of show what he's capable of going forward, or whether he's maybe not quite been at the level that you're sort of looking for.
I think with players like Liam Bennett, obviously he came to when he was very young, and when you could see very, very evidently when he was playing in the wing-back role, and had a bit more creative license, didn't really have all the defensive responsibilities, / occupying as much space as his own responsibility. He really thrived. Now, as our squad's become a bit more thin and different styles of play, different approaches have been implemented, teams have managed to expose him a bit more, especially when he has to play as a bit more of a resolute role defensive player and a fullback. So he has his strengths. Definitely, I think he's a great little player, very, very useful. But I think maybe over the last sort of half season, we have started to see for the first time actually where his weaknesses lie as well. Now it's up to the manager whether it would be worth changing a system just to obviously let one player excel. That's not something that I don't think Gary Monk would do. But yeah, fans have started to notice slight lapses in performance over a more consistent period, whereas we thought that he was sort of a player that was consistently, performing really well on the team. And but he's no more at fault than any other player has been this season for bad results. And I hope we keep him. I'm not sure that we will past this season, because I know that he has had a lot of interest over the course of the last 2 years. After the loan at Walsall, he performed really well, and then doing really well for us. So yeah, who knows? But I do think, obviously, I think he's better as a wing back, because he has that more creative license and sort of the license to not have to worry too much or stay too deep, and he has more cover. But yeah, I think he's a great player, and I really hope we keep hold of him.
Well, let's hope that's the case. So, Freddie, do you feel like it's likely a Cambridge stay up at this stage or go down?
I'd be really ashamed of myself if I said that we were going to go down. I mean, it obviously hasn't looked good this season, and maybe something has been different this season to the last few years in terms of the way that results are coming and the attitude on and off the pitch. But I'd always be someone that would back my team, and we are still in with a shout. We have game in hand over a couple of teams around us, and just have to see how the next few weeks go, and then I can give you a proper answer. But yeah, I'm always going to back my team, and I think we're going to do it.
Well, there you go. Brilliant stuff. Fighting talk there from Freddie. Thanks so much, Freddie, and all the best for the rest of the season, mate.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers. Well, we can't be joined by our usual Ed Walker, but I know he can't join us live. It's European night, apparently.
He's too busy doing the Brewers Babble, Gab.
Oh, right, is that what it is? Anyway, he has very kindly left us a video message. Here's what he had to say. If I can get it up, fingers crossed.
Brewers, and boy, is it proved timely. It wasn't even 2 weeks ago that I came out of Broadfield Stadium feeling a level of acceptance of how this season was ultimately going to end up. At that point, Burton were bottom of the table, 11 points from safety, and had just managed a 1-1 draw from a winning position against another relegation side in Crawley Town, bringing it up to 19 total points dropped from winning positions across this season. The 3 games since have been pretty much perfection. 3 wins, 1 away at Wigan Athletic, 2 at home to Rotherham United and Reading. All 3 different kinds of wins, but all feeling wonderful to watch and experience, and it's made the bottom end of that League One table look very different to what it did only a short while ago. What's the secret? Well, I think it's a couple of things that Gary Bowyer needs to be given the credit for, and it's remarkable really how little overall change is needed to happen in order for this run to occur. The first thing that has to be said, he has made 3 January signings at the time that I'm recording this, and every single one of them has hit. All 3 have been a perfect fit into taking this preferred 3-5-2 shape just up to another level. Standout for me, Owen Dodgson, in on loan from Burnley. One of the things we as fans realised over the festive period is just how strong of an asset Udoka Godwin-Malithe is, how impressive both his technical and physical qualities are. So much so that he can single-handedly be an attacking threat down the right-hand side of the pitch. The problem was there wasn't that equivalent of him on the left-hand side, and now there is. Dodgson is everything you could want from a left wing-back in a 3-5-2 shape. He's front-footed, there's a desire to push forward down the flank when Burton are in possession and support his outside centre-back Jack Armour when they're off the ball. Burton's focus these last 3 games has been around working the ball out wide, getting it to him particularly in a high-up position, and then attacking the box to get on the end of the crosses he provides. When Dodgson gets those low-driven deliveries right, they are put on a plate for the multiple options that now occupy the middle. Set pieces and open play. That left foot has just been a cheat code over these last 3 games. JJ McKiernan, in on loan from Lincoln City, he's brought height and physicality to a midfield that up to now has been a lot more light and technical. He's a great box-to-box runner. I love how smart he is with his touches. He operates really well in a left-sided partnership with Dodgson already. Very comfortable drifting into that left channel or playing in the left half space of advanced midfield. A willing third-man runner. He's just been a great fit. Jon Daddy Bødvarsen. I can't remember the last Burton striker who came in and hit the ground running like this guy has. 4 goals in 3 starts. A natural instinct with positioning to be on the end of rebounds and first-time finishes. He has struck a really effective goal-scoring partnership with Romain Borrell, who has been one of the few bright sparks from the previous month of football. Borrell, similarly to Bødvarsen, an informed striker, a proper workhorse with his physicality, great for a battling team like this Burton one is. That edge that I think he's got over Jon Daddy, there's a wicked turn of pace to him which allows him to stretch the play with his movements in behind and close down opponents a lot quicker. 3 new signings, all setting things alight. The other notable change, a mix of new personnel in the midfield unit. The notable absence there would be Elliot Watt, dropped by choice for the first time this season for that game against Wigan. Apparently he's missed the most recent 2 with a recent injury. It's hard to deny that we don't look better without him in there. Watt has been maybe the most divisive figure in the squad among the fan base. There is a respect for his passing range, but he just hasn't been the right fit to be a Burton Albion 6. You're looking for someone in that position who's either a good ball winner or a good ball retainer, and he just hasn't been either of those. That deeper midfield role for the last 3 games has belonged instead to Kegs Schalk, and it's worked. What you get with Kegs is a technically sound midfielder who's sensible in possession, but he's got a greater level of mobility and a defensive intent that Elliot Watt just hasn't shown to the same level. He's been that solid enough level of security that has allowed both JJ McKinnon and Charlie Webster to have a lot greater license in the attacking half of the pitch. Got to give a mention to the back line finally. Ryan Sweeney, he's on to player of the season. Absolute rock in the half defence. Terence Van Kooten, the new arrival from Stevenage, solid with that added layer of technical ball control. Jack Armour has had a real redemption during this winning run. He's a dependable left centre-back these last 3 games. Godwin Malithe and Dodgson bring the defensive output you just asked for from wing-backs. And in goal, well, Max has been Max. Lovely few days of football that's really lifted the mood around the Pirelli to no end. We need a lot more wins than just these, though. We're up to 24 points now, which is nice. I would still say you're looking for another 7 to 8 more at least from these final 18 games. It is a big ask, but these last 10 odd days have shown that there is a team capable of doing it. The fight and attacking impetus that we asked for is here. This lot have not been playing like a bottom 4 side during this small winning run that they put together. A few more days left of the transfer window. I would still like a few more additions if possible. Number 1 for me, I'd like a specialist ball-winning midfielder, someone in the Stephen Quinn, the Robbie Weir mould, someone who can make that 6th position his own. Kegs Chalk has been good there, but it's not his forte to be that role, and I would quite like if he could instead be an alternative number 8 to the rest of the season. On top of that, just a bit more added depth will do, to midfield and the front line especially. A 3rd dependable source of goals, if I can be cheeky, that would be handy. Burrell and Budvarsson, it's the clear starting front pair, but that front line does feel weak at the moment either of them do come off. Mason Bennett just can't be trusted to lots of games or lots of goals. Danilo Orsi has got his qualities as a finisher in a possession-based build-up team, as a striker in a more direct side with a lot of out-possession work like this one is. It just doesn't fit. 3 wins in a row, 10 points from the last 12 available. The belief is back at Burton Albion.
Well, there you go. The belief is back at Burton Albion. Thanks to Ed Walker for that excellent contribution. Jake, you know what? I'm really surprised that Ed said that Kegs Chalk has a higher technical ceiling than Elliot Watt, because I granted Kegs Chalk is more of a physical, dynamic player, but I think if we're looking at passing range, I think Elliot Watt can sort of really spray it about in a way that I couldn't really imagine Kegs Chalk doing. So
I mean, you saw it with Salford for a number of years, haven't you? In League Two, I nearly made an absolute something of myself there. He's technically gifted, is where I'm trying to go with that. His set piece delivery is a real threat, and I kind of thought that when Gary Bowyer come in, he'd strip them back to basics, make them hard to play against, good for set pieces. Well, Elliot Watt in League Two has been a cheat code on set pieces, free kicks, corners. His delivery has racked up a lot of assists. I think there was a season where he got 16 assists, Gab, for Salford in
22,
the league.
23, I think, possibly.
So clearly the boy's got it at that level. I think what Ed really doesn't like about him, and I have seen myself, is a lack of mobility. That's where I think Kegs Chalk maybe edges him out in a game where you need to be more mobile in that 6th position. I think, not saying that Elliot Watt is overweight, or I don't know what, he's not done quite shift around the pitch like Kegs Chalk can, whether that's age, whether that's his profile. I think that just lends himself to find a starting place. And you got to remember, when you've got McKinnon and Webster in front of you, and I hope you're going to ask me about JJ McKinnon.
Oh, don't be worried, Jake. I saw your face.
Good. I'm very happy. I think you just need someone to be mobile, to shift left to right with the defence, with the back 3, in order to make those interceptions and sustain counter attacks and things like that. So, yeah, I think that's. I don't know. I understand why you maybe say that Elliot Watt could be a better fit, but I think for the physicality,
well, it's not. I think for Gary Bowyer, for the style that Gary Bowyer wants to play, I definitely think Kegs Chalk is a better fit. Yeah, and I can see why Ed's saying he wants another defensive midfielder anyway. But I think as a technical player, I still rate Elliot Watt, but I think it needs to be the right configuration, the right circumstances. The whole team needs to be built around him. And he does seem to have his limitations. Where was I? Yeah, so Burton Albion, they're very resurgent. I suppose the question is, I mean, do you think Burton Albion are the team of the current bottom 4 likeliest to get out of it? Because form would say yes, but there's also part of me that has a bit of belief in Gareth Ainsworth at Shrewsbury. And I also think as a motivator, I think I'd probably be motivated by Gareth Ainsworth, maybe with respect to Gary Bowyer more than I think Bowyer has different qualities. I think he can really organise a team, work to the higher levels and been relatively successful there. So he brings the experience in that sense. But Ainsworth is a motivator. I'd go to war for Gareth Ainsworth, whereas for Gary Bowyer, maybe not in the same way. And that's not an insult to him. It's just different qualities.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, Gab. I think you look at momentum. Momentum's a massive thing in football, and at the minute, you'd have to say that Burton Albion are playing like a team with momentum, and that therefore makes people think, well, they're going to get out of it. But you have to remember, Gab, this Burton Albion team have played 28 games and they've only won 5. And if they do that over the course of the remaining, they will have no more than 8 wins throughout the course of the season. If they replicate. So I think you have to remember that a season is 9 months, not 3 weeks. Certainly when it comes to teams that hit a hot streak. Certainly.
But at the same time, Jake, I completely agree with you. You've always got to look at the bigger picture. But I would expect there to be an improvement from probably each of the bottom 4. Sometimes it goes the other way, where teams, once they know they've not got a chance of staying up, they kind of completely capitulate. But often, I think in the last third of the season, I would say it's quite common for teams to really, give games everything and maybe start to increase their points per game return.
Yeah, no, correct. And what we might be seeing, Gab, is just the impact of 3 extremely good signings that maybe, let's be honest, maybe shouldn't really be playing for a team down the bottom end of the league. Coming in.
By the way, I saw Bodvarson's finish. I think it was his first goal against Rotherham last Saturday. It was just such a cultured finish. Like, I can't remember a Burton Albion player, Burton Albion striker producing that kind of class in terms of finish. They've had very industrious centre forwards like Stuart Bevan and Liam Boyce in previous years in successful teams, but they've never really had a centre forward that's provides that kind of quality. A lot of their goals historically have come through Aikens out wide. So Bodvarsson be brilliant.
I can think of Burton strikers that have done it, maybe not in a Burton shirt, like for example Cole Stockton at Morecambe. He could finish with class, won at Morecambe, but didn't work out for him at Burton. Sure. And Danilo Orsi, again, look at a lot of the goals he scored last year for Crawley. Excellent finisher, just hasn't quite cut it in a Burton shirt like I said.
He's not going to do it in a Gary Bowyer team, is he, really?
Well, no, exactly, because he requires the ball not to be laid on a plate for him, but he requires a different type of build-up to get the best out of him. And you're looking at Dodgson as well. He's made, like Ed said, I watched the game against Wigan. For obvious reasons now, Gab, I have an interest in Burton Albion to make sure
love each other, really.
Well, it's nothing to do with Ed Walker, actually. It's maybe to do with the new lad they've got in on loan. But he's been fantastic, Owen Dodgson. His left-footed deliveries have been unbelievable. Like, I watched the game, like I said, the game against Wigan, and both goals come from Owen Dodgson. The ball and his quality. I think the second goal on Tuesday night comes from his.
One of them was just that absolute surging run, wasn't it, down the left-hand side? It was unbelievable.
The first one. So they concede and they pretty much score almost straight from kickoff, where JJ runs particularly well through the midfield, plays it to Owen Dodgson on the left, who runs 5, 6, 7 yards and delivers a really early ball that I don't think the Wigan defenders were anticipating, and then it sort of ricochets. Burrell misses it, and it falls to young Daddy Bodvarsson. And well, we know we can do it, Gab, because he's done it not only at this level, but I seem to remember watching him in the Championship for Reading and Millwall and thinking he's a fairly decent centre forward when the ball gets put in the right areas for him. So clearly, those 3 players that are all making a beat, and they're all in really important areas of the pitch where they've been quite poor this year, really. Left wing back, they've struggled to find somebody to play consistent minutes. I know Jack Armour's kind of played there as a left centre back as well. Midfield has been a little bit chop and change of Elliot Watt, Kegs Chow, Charlie Webster. Having McKiernan in there provides him with a real attacking midfielder, I think, a real number 10.
Yeah, I love McKiernan's driving runs, but he seems to know as well, Jake, when to release the ball, which is really crucial. His decision making seems to be really strong.
Well, every time I've seen JJ in a Lincoln shirt, Gab, I've been ridiculously impressed, and I was really surprised that we'd loaned him out. But I am very happy that he's gone into League One because
what was the plan for him next season, Jake? Do you think
build the team around him?
Really? You'd go that strong?
I certainly think that he is. Obviously, he'll come back. He'll be 23. You play him in midfield next to someone maybe a bit more dynamic, like maybe like an Ethan Hamilton, and then if we can keep a Rahan, that would be great. I'm not expecting us to, but then
I think McKiernan is dynamic. You know,
do you think McKiernan can be that? Maybe we play McKiernan as that sort of 8, box to box 8, and we play Tom Bayliss as 11. But this isn't about Lincoln, Gab. But this is about JJ McKiernan.
No, but I'm interested. Okay. But because Bayliss, by the way, I loved what Bayliss did too. I mean, poor Sam Hughes of Peterborough. He looked like he had no midfield protection. And
where's Tim? I need Tim to make fun of.
I know.
He's not here. I have to send him an email, Gab. But yeah, no, I've been really impressed with JJ. And this loan spell is perfect. He gets to play League One football regularly, which not only does he need, but we need. And he's being really productive for Burton. He got an assist the other night against Reading, scored and made one against Rotherham. So it's clearly working out. And then I think he's had chances where he maybe should have scored as well. So he's clearly getting in those advanced positions. So really happy for that. But I think the momentum that Burton have got at the moment it maybe skews everyone's vision a little bit compared to the other clubs around the bottom 4. We've sort of said, Gab. I said this to you privately earlier. I think Exeter are about to get involved. You don't, but I think Exeter. I'm not saying that Exeter are going to go. I don't think Exeter are going to go down, Gab, because I trust that this team could probably get another 4 wins and 4 draws to stay up or whatever. Sure. But the manner in which they are falling towards the bottom of the league, they are reportedly about to lose Milanik Ali to Luton.
They got Joel Colwell on loan from Cardiff.
Yes, but
who's meant to be better than Ruben Colwell in terms of potentials. So.
Well, we'll see how that goes. And they've signed. Whilst we've been on air, they've just signed Alex Hartridge back on loan from Wickham.
There you go. That's the solution to their defensive, because that had been a massive problem for them. They'd been able to play.
They've brought back Ryan Trevitt, who was good last season for them. So, yeah, I think you have to maybe involve them because they're only 2 points in front of Peterborough. And Peterborough.
Well, I think you have to involve them, Jake, because their form is quite worrying. I think it's something like 1 point from the last 6. Forgive me, not quite 100%. It'd be something like that. And then also there's teams in the bottom 4, so they'd have been able to get away with it if none of the bottom 4 were showing signs of life. But because all of them are to different extents, that probably does bring. And also, if you're a Supporters Trust owned club in League One, in probably the wealthiest ever iteration of League One, you probably are going to encounter some challenges. So, I think it's I think you're right to include them in that conversation. And I think I think hopefully those additions, bringing in Trevitt and Hartridge, can be the difference they need.
Well, we've seen both of them players do it in an Exeter shirt before, haven't we? I thought Ryan Trevitt was ridiculously good for them before he got recalled. And Alex Hartridge has always been a dependable left-sided defender. It was actually somebody that, if Sean Rowan was to go between now and the end of the window, Alex Hartridge would have been a really good stopgap, I think, for us between now and the end of the season. So for him to go somewhere that he knows, I suppose that's a real pulling factor for him, isn't it? He knows the manager, he knows the club, the fans, the location. It was an easy move for him. I'm going to ask you now, Gab. Who goes down?
So I think I'm probably more confident that Crawley go down than any of the current bottom 4, despite them winning last time out.
And Ronan Darcy going as well, big impact.
That's true as well. Yeah, I think that it's very difficult in a relegation dogfight to play your way out when your players, your squads. Probably on paper, it's the weakest squad in the league, and you're trying to play football with that squad. And I think when confidence is low, I think in possession work requires a lot more confidence, whereas out of possession work, which Burton Albion and Shrewsbury and Cambridge will sort of try and maximise, it's less confidence dependent, and it's more about whether the manager can motivate the players, which I back Gareth Ainsworth to do. Gary Bowyer in a different way with experience and higher level sort of championship nights, and the fact that they've won their last 3 in Bodvarshan, and then Cambridge, I suppose, more with their recruitment, I suppose, and the impact that might have. So I would say Crawley. I would probably go Cambridge, and then I've got a feeling that maybe one of Burton or Shrewsbury will make the great escape. Where are you at with all that, Jake?
Would it be an insane take to see I can see the current bottom 4 still go down? I could still see a world where Shrewsbury under Ainsworth are maybe, whilst they're working incredibly hard for him, I don't think they brought in the correct bodies over the January window. That might change between now and Monday evening, which is completely fair. But as of the time of recording, on Thursday night, I don't see enough depth and quality in that team to keep them up. You're relying a lot on Gareth Ainsworth to do that. Yeah. I think that's really difficult. So I'm kind of inclined to think Shrewsbury. I think I agree with you, Ari, Crawley and Cambridge. Crawley, it's incredibly difficult. I've had this theory for a while now that maybe Rob Elliott has a little bit got the Gateshead tax a little bit. Mike Williamson was massively bigged up because he came through at Gateshead and sort of rejuvenated the style of play, and it did really well there. Rob Elliott sort of similar job to what Stephen Schumacher kind of did under Ryan Lowe. Just stepped in and just guided it in a similar path without really changing too much. I wouldn't actually be surprised, Gab, if we see Liam Bridcut land an EFL job soon, because he's now subsequently gone in to try and carry the baton as well. So some EFL club will be convinced that Liam Bridcut is the next coming of Russell Martin or something like that. Would be be interesting.
EFL clubs will take heed of that, I'm sure.
Very good, Gab. Very good. Cambridge. The underlying data was good at the start of the season. They've been pretty pants for most of it. I like some of the signings. I think Ben Stevenson was good, but he didn't get a look in at Pompey. They were obviously title winners. Don Ballard makes it interesting for me. I like
Don Ballard, Jake.
I like him. I really like him.
He's meant to be very highly rated at Southampton, isn't he?
Exactly. And if you're highly rated out of Southampton, Gab, you tend to be pretty good because they have an unbelievable academy and a history of bringing through young players. And maybe it's just the environment of a Blackpool and a Reading that he was at last year. Well, Reading would have been difficult for most players to try and progress in. And Blackpool, he probably hasn't nailed down consistent minutes. And now that they've got the likes of Tom Bloxham to play up front, which I saw firsthand on Tuesday night, Don Ballard was probably never going to get a kick anyway. So better for him to go in, maybe become the main man and play at Cambridge. Whether it's a lot, it's asking a lot of him, isn't it? I know Ryan Loftus has been resurgent in the last couple of weeks. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think he's going to score 15 goals or 10 goals between now and the end of the season. So for me, Cambridge are just lacking goals in order to stay up, in my opinion. And then you're looking at Burton, Northampton, and Bristol Rovers for me. And Bristol Rovers were whilst they beat Barnsley the other week, they got back-to-back wins.
Yeah,
I feel like they're still well and truly in it, and they need a good couple of players to come in. I know Matt Butcher's gone in there tonight.
Yeah,
which I think is a particularly good sign. And I know Ben was asking for. I think that's a really good signing for Bristol Rovers. Gab did really well at Argyle. Been okay for Wickham. I don't think he's had his fair chance. I don't know what you think about him.
Yeah, I've always felt like Matt Butcher is a very good box-to-box midfielder in League One. Certainly, I think he'd probably play for a top 10 team and do that role as long as he's got either in a team that isn't asked to be super possession based, or if you've got really technical players, around him, like a deep line playmaker and, a really creative 10 or something like that. I think he could slot into that quite nicely. So yeah, I like Matt Butcher. I think he's got bags of energy. I think he seems to be well regarded, whether he's played for Plymouth Argyle or Wickham or Accrington Stanley at this level. So yeah, I think his energy is going to be a big thing that he's going to bring to Bristol Rovers. What I'm really curious about, and Ben, by all means, comment on this, because I'll be really curious to hear your thoughts. We weren't quite able to get hold of a Bristol Rovers fan for this evening. Is normally when highly rated coaches come in season, basically it's kind of, it's basically, you've got to think of it as a sort of a phase one where you've got to adapt to the league and be really pragmatic about what's going to get you results in the here and now, because you might have some brilliant ideas to get across. Because I've spoken to people, a Brighton fan who covers their under-21s rates Inigo Calderon very, very highly. So I think if he's given time and he gets this phase one right, I think he could be extremely successful, because you give him a pre-season to implement some of his ideas in a more long-form way. I think, no reason why he couldn't do really well at a decent Bristol Rovers squad as well. But I think also you've got to kind of adapt to the situation that you're in right now. It's a pressure cooker situation, maybe not so much time to implement so many of your ideas. So you've kind of got to find a way to get results in the here and now. So that's the challenge for Inigo Calderon, I think.
Well, exactly, Gab. And case in point of someone that was able to do that superbly last season was Michael. So he'll be taking a lot of confidence from Michael, maybe. But he's in a different situation, I suppose. There is an actual threat that this Bristol Rovers team might actually go down, because you look at it, they're only 4 points clear of a resurgent Burton Albion. And also, they've got a game in hand, Gab, but Bristol Rovers are so inconsistent, you probably wouldn't back them to win that game in hand anyway. So the gap's only 4 points. We could be talking on Saturday, the gap could be 1 point. And then all of a sudden, Bristol Rovers fans were in absolute bedlam. So I'm sort of torn. I'm pretty confident in them three.
One thing that you can, just on Bristol Rovers though, Jake, I'm amazed that Scott Sinclair is still starting for Bristol Rovers, because they've got they've put together, they've spent a few quid. They've brought in a lot of players. I think it was 19 players they brought in the summer. Brought in players like Isaac Hutchinson, and I don't think they, some of those players that they brought in have come in cheap. So it seems really surprising to me that Sinclair, who I think is past his best and has been for a few years now, is still starting for them. So that's a weird one for me.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of they spent money on Shaq Ford. Obviously, Promise Cherry cost a pretty penny. Pardon me. Raw Sartori had a good year at Leyton Orient. So yeah, and you've got other options out there like Gatlin O'Donkor that can play out wide. Luke McCormick, I know he's gone out on loan, but they have options. And Isaac Hutchinson is actually someone that I quite liked based on his campaign last year at Walsall, but just hasn't really worked for him. I just feel like they've maybe overloaded themselves with number 10s that play as number 10s and can't play out wide. Like, I wouldn't ask Raul Sartori to play out wide. I don't think he's got the pace and running ability to go and play out wide. Isaac Hutchinson.
Yeah.
You want, for example, for Isaac, sorry, Gab, before you jump in on Raul Sartori. With Isaac Hutchinson, they signed him because he did so well for Walsall last season, playing in midfield, in central midfield. So you want to try and play, and I can understand maybe why they're playing the likes of Sinclair still, because he is a natural wide player, whereas I look at the squad, bar Luke Thomas, I don't really see another natural wide player, because Promise Cherry, quick but a centre forward. Shaq Ford, quick but a centre forward. So whilst they have maybe abilities to play out wide because of their pace, they want to play through the middle, and I feel like they've got too many players that want to play through the middle.
Yeah, it's a great point. Especially, you could even throw in like the fullbacks. Like, it's not as if they've got super attacking fullbacks. Like Taylor Moore is a centre half, I would say, more than a right back. I think he can do a solid job at right back. But if you've got a really narrow attack, then I would probably rather have Joel Senior at right back and then put in, one of these sort of central attacking players on the right wing over Sinclair. So interesting to hear any gas heads on here to sort of comment their thoughts, having watching them every week. But so a few maybe imperfections for Inigo Carlton to work with until he gets the summer. I mean, I can't imagine there'll be many players that are contract in the summer, so he might still have to work with some of those players next season. Bristol Rovers, I would probably for now say they might just stay up, but I'm a little bit tentative about it because I am conscious of some of these teams improving. I mean, Peterborough, where are you with Peterborough, Jake? Obviously, you saw them thrashed 5-1 at Central Bank.
Oh, what a wonderful day it was, Gab, as well. For me, Gab, this is the worst Peterborough United outfit I have ever seen. And I've seen Peterborough a lot. They've played against Lincoln a lot, and I think they're awful. And Ferguson would not have come out with the comments in which he did after that battle at Central Bank if he didn't sort of agree with me a little bit. They were soft. They were causing their own mistakes. They were still... I compare them on our podcast, Gab, a little bit in terms of their stubbornness to try and keep playing out the back. If you can remember COVID, MK Dons under Russell Martin, they just kept playing the ball out the back. And if you won the ball high up the pitch, you scored goals. And we did it against them. We scored 4 goals against them. Morgan Rogers and Brennan Johnson, by the way.
Isn't that weird, though? Because I've never thought of Darren Ferguson's teams being at their best as like being a super possession. But I wouldn't say the 2021 side was super possession based. I would say they were more balanced. They could do a bit of both. I would say if I think of a Darren Ferguson side in their peak era, say the sort of mid to late noughties, I'm thinking it was more about pace and just getting after teams, and that it wasn't really being super possession based. So I do find that slightly odd.
I think it's coming from above him, Gab. Obviously, I don't know if you listened to the podcast with Darren McAntony where
I've not listened to the last one or two, but I do listen to it generally.
Generally talks about them playing good football, passing it out from the back, having the ball, getting at teams and using that possession to almost suffocate teams. That's my take on what I've heard from Darren McAntony over maybe the last year.
Darren McAntony isn't an advocate for like possession for possession's sake. I would imagine he'd be someone who would.
No, but I think maybe Fergie's interpreted what he wants as slightly different. And they still did it to their own detriment time and time again on Saturday. And defensively, they just made mistake after mistake after mistake. And you look at the number of goals that Peterborough conceded. Gab, 52 goals in 28 games. If you are conceding 2 goals a game, you are not giving yourself an opportunity to win games. And Peterborough at this moment in time need to win them. I know they beat a really blunt Wigan team on Tuesday night, but I sort of think maybe that result comes off the back of normally when you see a team get beat. When they concede 4, 5, or 6, they just completely go back to basics, emphasise the defence, and that's what they did on Tuesday night, it seems. I don't think this Peterborough team can particularly keep many clean sheets, and therefore you're asking a lot without Kwame Poku to score the goals to keep them up. I think they're in it. I like the defensive additions, Gab. I do. I think Sam Hughes is a decent defender. He was for Burton. I think Teo Eden, I've seen it with my own eyes, has been a good defender for this level. Carl Johnston, I wasn't particularly 1,000,000% sold on. I don't think he was outstanding for Fleetwood last season or outstanding for them so far in League Two this year. Potentially they're buying what he could become rather than what he is now.
Well, I think the story goes, Jake, that Darren Ferguson saw him keep Ephron Mason-Clark quiet in a game against Peterborough last season, but that's a very small sample size. So I don't know whether that was like the whole, hopefully there was kind of more to the recruitment process than game. But
so did Lass Sorensen, and I can't remember them come knocking for Lass in the summer. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, no, it was I don't know, Peterborough, especially Gab. Obviously, there's rumours of Kyprianou leaving. You'd expect Peterborough to maybe do one or two bits of business between now and Monday, so they might well improve. But they are falling at an alarming rate, Peterborough. And obviously, we talk about the win against Wigan, but still to concede that many goals, you are putting a lot of pressure on the likes of Gustav Lindgren, who I actually thought was pretty good on Saturday. Ricky J. Jones, whether he stays is a completely another debate. Malik Mothersill seems very wishy-washy. Looks like he's got all the ability in the world, but potentially maybe not the right mindset. You're asking a lot of pressure on them to keep them in the division, and they're all young lads as well. That's where
that's the thing for me, Jake. Like, if I look at successful Peterborough sides, yes, they love developing young players and having exciting players, and you always think of great attacking players. But when they've been successful, they've had. I remember Mark Beavers, for instance, or even Josh Knight. Who wasn't necessarily old, but had a little bit of experience under his belt. They had going back even further, the likes of Sean Brisley and Gab Zakwani. So I think that, they definitely need that bit of experience. And I think that's been undervalued by Peterborough, looking too much on the model and not enough on tactically what we need now. And then also what worries me is Darren Ferguson's comments. Kind of seemed like he really did. I mean, I can't remember the exact words, but it was like it was the mentally weakest players that we've
worked. He called him soft, didn't he?
Soft, yeah. And do you know what? And he was very strong about it. It wasn't like there was question marks over the mentality, or I'm starting to wonder about it. It was very strong, the line that he went down. And it seems to me like the kind of thing you'd say when you're already relegated, you've given up on your players, 20 players out of contract in the summer, and you're sort of pitching to the board and to the fan base to lead the rebuild next season, when it's like they've got nothing else to give and the season's over. But this is something we were saying in January. You've still got over a third of a season still to play. You're going to have to motivate these players to play for you in the last 20-odd games of the season. So even if, and I'm not doubting for a moment that what Darren Ferguson was saying was true, but even if we take it as true, I still think it was a sort of dodgy move to come out and say it publicly.
Yeah. If you do it publicly so that you get the fans on side, or you do it in-house and you maybe dumb it down in terms of what maybe dumb it down for the press and the fans, so it looks like you're still trying to be together, but in-house you'd expect him to absolutely lose his rag, and he had every right to. I would take that press conference with a pinch of salt, Gab, as well, because he said he couldn't remember Lincoln ever scoring 5 goals in a game ever when we did it 3 times in 7 days last season. So taking it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But yeah, I think he was well within his rights, Gab.
It's a good job they didn't score the extra 2 goals in 2021 then.
yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks, Gab.
So where was I? So Peterborough, I'm kind of talking myself into worrying a bit about Peterborough then. They did get the win after Ferguson's comments on Tuesday night, so that gives them a little bit of breathing room, and it's a 6-point gap for them now. Exeter City, I know you think that they could come into that conversation. So if I had to go at the moment, I think Shrewsbury might stay up. So I would go with Crawley, Cambridge, Burton and Northampton. Would I go with and then 2 from Burton, Northampton, and Peterborough going down? That would be my thinking.
That's interesting, Gab, because I'm probably going to go Shrewsbury, Cambridge, Crawley, Northampton. I think that's the 4 I'm.
Yeah, I can see why you'd go with Burton Albion staying up. I mean, I'd probably have. I'd maybe have them over Northampton at the moment, just because of the form they're in and the Bodvarsson and impact, and the fact that feels like Burton Albion can score goals now with Burrell and Bodvarsson, and it's sort of clicking in attack for Burton in a way that it isn't so much for Northampton. The improvement under Nolan's more just being defence and midfield. So I think, but then that would mean that you'd need. Is a Bristol Rovers or an Exeter going to come down and say that Bernard?
I think Bristol Rovers have probably got too much quality, Gab, in the ranks, and it's the same with Peterborough. I look at the team. I look at them. I know football's not played on paper, but you look at the players that they have at their disposal, and they should really be comfortable. Mid-table teams, and they're just being mismanaged in one way or another. I think that quality inevitably tells. So that's why I'm.
But if you're going into a pressure cooker situation, then Jake, you've got Gareth Ainsworth, who's had this incredible positive impact and is going to get the players fighting and believing, and you've got a Peterborough team who their manager has given up on their players. I would rather be in the Shrewsbury dressing room than the Peterborough dressing room.
Yeah, I can see your point.
I know there's a big. 8 points is a fairly big gap in the last 19 games, which might count for something. But I think in terms of dressing rooms, I'd rather be in the Shrewsbury dressing room right now.
Yeah, I think if either it's going to be one of Bristol Rovers, Peterborough, or Exeter to get involved in that conversation, I think it might be Peterborough purely because of the inexperience. The only saving grace that Peterborough have got, Gab, is that Poku is back at the start of March, and that gives them 2 full months. I know it'll take a bit of time to get up to speed, no doubt, but still, a player of Kwame Poku's quality will be enough, you'd imagine, to keep them above the dotted line. So that's why I've maybe not gone for Peterborough to go down. Sure. But I certainly think they could put themselves in a hole until Poku can come along with his shovel and dig them out. So it's anyone's guess, Gab, but I certainly think you draw the line at Wigan. I think 17th to 24th, that bottom, or what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 teams. It's 4 from 8, and I certainly think I agree with you. I certainly think 3 of the bottom 4 are probably already decided. It's just that one place that seems to be up for grabs at the moment.
Well, there we have it. Jake, pleasure to chat to you about the League One dogfight this evening. Hopefully, Lincoln City can put some form together and come into that playoff equation between now and the end. Thanks to you for watching. Thanks to all our guests this evening as well. And we'll see you again next week.